Imagine yourself in a world where time slows down, where the hustle and bustle of daily life fades into the quiet embrace of snow-covered mountains. You are about to embark on a journey, a gentle story filled with peace, connection, and the soft magic of a winter wonderland. This is not just a tale of a mother and daughter exploring a historic lodge nestled in Vermont's serene landscape. It is a doorway into stillness, a path toward deep relaxation. Close your eyes, if you wish, and take a deep breath in. Let the air fill your lungs like the fresh, crisp air of a snowy morning. Exhale slowly, releasing any tension, and imagine the weight of a cozy blanket wrapping around you. Each word of this story will guide you further into a place of calm, carrying you gently into a restful state. Feel the warmth of a crackling fire nearby, the soft glow of lanterns casting shadows that flicker like memories. Picture Clara and Lily, a mother and daughter, preparing for a weekend of quiet adventure and discovery. They journey to the Trapp family lodge, a place steeped in history and the spirit of the season, where the snow falls in soft whispers, and every corner holds a story waiting to be told. With each chapter, you will join them as they stroll through a picturesque village, glide along peaceful trails, and gather by firesides where laughter and stories weave together like threads of a comforting tapestry. You'll hear the crunch of snow beneath their boots, the gentle chime of distant sleigh bells, and the soothing harmonies of holiday carols. As you listen to their tale, let yourself drift, following the rhythm of the words like a lullaby. Each scene, each breath, will guide you deeper into relaxation. Let go of the thoughts that linger in the corners of your mind, and allow the story to envelop you in its warmth, gently preparing you for the stillness of sleep. Now, take another deep breath in, and let it go. Begin this story with a heart open to calm, a mind ready to unwind, and the assurance that each word will bring you closer to the peaceful rest you deserve. Welcome to the world of Clara and Lily, a world of quiet joy, timeless traditions, and the gentle magic of a winter retreat. Let the journey begin. Chapter 1. The snow had begun falling lightly that Friday morning as Clara zipped up her suitcase. She paused for a moment, gazing out the window of their small home in Boston, where the city's sounds were muffled under a soft blanket of white. This trip had been her idea, a chance to escape the rush of everyday life, to spend time with Lily before her daughter became too wrapped up in high school activities and friendships to cherish these quiet moments with her mother. Do you think we'll see real snow-covered mountains, like in those postcards? Lily asked, leaning against the doorframe of Clara's room. Her voice carried a mix of excitement and curiosity, her green scarf draped loosely over her shoulder. Clara turned to her with a smile. I am certain of it. Stowe is known for its beauty this time of year. The Trapp family lodge will feel like stepping into another world. The drive out of Boston was seamless, with the city giving way to rolling hills and forests draped in winter's quiet majesty. Lily had chosen their playlist, alternating between soft Christmas carols and gentle acoustic tunes. Clara occasionally glanced at her daughter, who gazed out the window, tracing frost patterns with her fingers on the glass. I looked up some pictures of the lodge, Lily said, breaking the comfortable silence. It looks like one of those cozy places you'd see in a movie. Did you know the family from The Sound of Music built it? Clara nodded, her hands steady on the wheel. I read that. It's steeped in history. I think we'll learn a lot about their story while we're there. But mostly, I hope we can just unwind and enjoy ourselves. The drive seemed to pass in a serene haze, the kind of peacefulness that comes with roads bordered by towering evergreens and quiet farms nestled under snowy roofs. Clara pointed out a frozen lake at one point, where a group of skaters glided gracefully across the ice, their laughter visible in clouds of breath. When they stopped briefly at a small roadside cafe, the warmth of the place enveloped them immediately. The smell of fresh coffee and baked goods filled the air, and Lily insisted they try the spiced hot chocolate. Sitting by a window, they watched as the snow began to fall heavier, tiny crystals dancing in the air. "It feels like everything's slowing down out here," Lily murmured, her hands wrapped around her mug. "I like it." Clara reached across the table to touch her daughter's hand. "That's the magic of this kind of trip. Just wait until we get to the lodge. It's going to feel like we've stepped into a storybook." As they neared Stowe, the scenery became even more enchanting. The small town was tucked between the green mountains, and every rooftop and tree branch seemed dusted with powdered sugar. Lights twinkled in the distance, decorating homes and businesses with festive care. "Look!" Lily exclaimed, pointing to a white-steepled church in the center of the town. "It's like something from a postcard." Clara smiled, slowing the car to take in the scene. "That's the Stowe Community Church. I read that it's been a part of the town since the 1800s. We'll have to take a closer look tomorrow." They drove through the town's main street, where shop windows displayed glowing Christmas trees, hand-knit scarves, and signs advertising local maple syrup. Snowflakes swirled around them as if welcoming their arrival. The final stretch up the hill to the Trapp family lodge was winding and serene, the road flanked by snowy woods. As the lodge came into view, its Austrian-inspired architecture stood grand yet inviting against the backdrop of the mountains. Warm light spilled from the windows, and a welcoming wreath hung on the heavy wooden door. Lily's breath caught. "It's perfect," she whispered. Clara smiled softly, her heart full as they stepped out of the car into the crisp air. The snow crunched underfoot as they approached the entrance, where a kind-faced man held the door open for them. "Welcome to the Trapp family lodge," he said warmly. "You must be Clara and Lily. We've been expecting you." Inside, the lodge was a haven of warmth and festive charm. A roaring fire crackled in the grand stone fireplace, and the scent of pine and cinnamon filled the air. Clara felt an instant sense of peace as she took it all in, the wooden beams, the rich rugs, and the Christmas tree standing tall in the corner, its ornaments glinting in the firelight. Lily squeezed her mother's hand. "I already feel like this is going to be the best weekend ever." "Me too," Clara said softly, her voice almost a whisper. As they were led to their room, Clara felt the weight of the city slipping away entirely. This was the kind of quiet magic she had hoped for, and seeing the wonder on Lily's face made it all the more special. That night, after unpacking, they stood by the window of their room, gazing out at the snowy mountains under a star-filled sky. Clara wrapped an arm around her daughter. "Let's make this a trip to remember," she said. Lily nodded, leaning her head against Clara's shoulder. "Definitely," she whispered, her voice tinged with the contentment of being exactly where she was meant to be. As the snow continued to fall, soft and steady, the world outside seemed to settle into a peaceful rhythm. And for Clara and Lily, the adventure was just beginning. Chapter 2. The morning light filtered through gauzy curtains, casting a soft glow across the room. Clara stirred first, sitting up in bed and looking out the window at the snowy landscape. The mountains loomed in the distance, serene and dusted with fresh powder. For a moment, she simply watched, letting the stillness wash over her. "Mom," Lily said sleepily from her bed, her voice muffled by the covers, "does breakfast come with a view like that?" Clara chuckled. "I think it might. Let's find out." The dining room of the Trapp family lodge was a blend of rustic charm and holiday cheer. Tables were set with white linens and sprigs of holly, and a grand wreath hung over the fireplace. Guests chatted quietly, the sound blending with the faint hum of soft instrumental music. A kind-faced waiter named Mr. Emile approached them. "Good morning, ladies. Can I interest you in our special Austrian breakfast platter? It comes with fresh pastries, jams, and smoked meats, along with a pot of our house-blend coffee." "That sounds wonderful," Clara replied, glancing at Lily, who nodded enthusiastically. As they waited for their food, Clara admired the room. The wooden beams overhead, the intricate carvings on the chairs, and the warm lighting all spoke of care and tradition. The fire crackled in the hearth, and the smell of pine mingled with the scent of freshly baked bread. "I wonder if they decorated it like this back when the Von Trapp family lived here," Lily mused, tracing her finger along the edge of her glass. Mr. Emile returned, overhearing Lily's question. The Von Trapps were deeply connected to the traditions of their Austrian heritage, he said with a smile. They loved the holidays and often filled the lodge with music, decorations, and delicious food. In fact, much of what you see here pays homage to their original vision. Clara and Lily exchanged glances, both charmed by the connection to the family's history. After breakfast, they bundled up and made their way to the lobby, where a concierge desk awaited them. Mr. Hans was standing there, a jovial man with silver-rimmed glasses and a scarf wrapped neatly around his neck. "Good morning, Clara and Lily. How was your first night?" he asked warmly. "It was perfect," Clara replied. "We're excited to explore today. What would you recommend?" Mr. Hans leaned forward conspiratorially. "If you're interested in a bit of history, I suggest starting with a walk around the lodge. I'd be happy to guide you myself." Lily's eyes lit up. "Really? That would be amazing." They followed Mr. Hans through the lodge, his voice a soothing cadence as he shared stories of the Von Trapp family. He stopped in front of the music room, a cozy space adorned with photographs of the family and their performances. "This room was a favorite of the Von Trapps," Mr. Hans explained. "They often gathered here to sing and play music together. Guests would come from far and wide to hear them perform." Lily wandered over to a piano in the corner, lightly pressing a key. Its soft chime seemed to echo the past, a gentle reminder of the family's enduring legacy. From the music room, Mr. Hans led them to a grand balcony overlooking the snowy grounds. The Von Trapps chose this location because it reminded them of their home in Austria, he said. They wanted a place where they could feel connected to the mountains and nature. The view was breathtaking. Snow blanketed the rolling hills, and the tips of the evergreens sparkled under the sunlight. In the distance, Clara could see skiers gliding down a gentle slope. "This place is magical," Clara said softly. Mr. Hans nodded. "That's what makes it so special. It's not just a lodge, it's a place where history, nature, and tradition come together." As they descended back into the main part of the lodge, Mr. Hans paused by a wall lined with old photographs. "This is the Von Trapp family," he said, pointing to an image of a smiling group dressed in traditional Austrian attire. Lily studied the photo intently. "They look so happy. It's like you can feel how much they loved being here." Mr. Hans smiled. "That's the spirit of this place. It has a way of making people feel at home." After thanking Mr. Hans for the tour, Clara and Lily decided to explore the grounds on their own. They walked along a snow-covered path that led to a small chapel nestled among the trees. Its stained glass windows glowed softly, even in the daylight. Clara paused, taking in the serenity of the scene. "This is exactly what I hoped for," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lily looked up at her mother. "What do you mean?" "I wanted us to have a place where we could slow down, reconnect, and just be," Clara replied. Lily smiled, slipping her hand into Clara's. "I think you picked the perfect spot." They lingered for a while, listening to the gentle rustle of the wind through the trees and the distant sound of laughter from other guests. By the time they returned to the lodge, they were ready to warm up by the fire and plan their afternoon. As they settled into a pair of armchairs in the lounge, sipping mugs of hot tea, Clara glanced at Lily and felt a deep sense of contentment. This was exactly what she had dreamed of, a weekend filled with peace, history, and the simple joy of spending time together. Chapter 3. After breakfast the next morning, Clara and Lily bundled up in their winter coats, scarves, and mittens, ready to explore the heart of Stowe Village. A light dusting of snow from the previous night had left the streets sparkling, as if the town had been sprinkled with powdered sugar. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke from chimneys. At the lodge's front desk, Mrs. Beatrice greeted them with a warm smile. She was an older woman with a cheerful demeanor and an obvious love for her hometown. "You ladies are in for a treat," she said, tying a bright red scarf around her neck. "Stowe Village is brimming with charm, especially this time of year. Follow me, and I'll show you the best spots." The short drive into the village was serene, the road lined with evergreens heavy with snow. Clara parked near Main Street, and the trio stepped onto a pathway cleared of snow but still glittering under the sunlight. "This way," Mrs. Beatrice said, gesturing toward the iconic white-steepled Stowe Community Church. Its tall spire reached into the sky, a beacon against the snowy backdrop. "This church has stood here since the early 1800s, Mrs. Beatrice explained as they approached. "It's not just a place of worship but a symbol of the community. During the holidays, they host carol services that fill the air with music." As they walked along Main Street, the historic charm of Stowe unfolded before them. Small shops and galleries lined the road, their windows dressed with garlands, twinkling lights, and festive displays. "Let's step in here," Mrs. Beatrice said, opening the door to Laughing Moon chocolates. Inside, the air was warm and rich with the scent of cocoa. Lily's eyes widened as she took in the rows of handcrafted chocolates, truffles, and candy canes. A chocolatier named Mr. Lionel greeted them, offering a tray of samples. "Try our peppermint bark," he said. "It's a holiday favorite." Clara took a piece, savoring the blend of dark chocolate and crisp peppermint. "This is heavenly," she said, smiling at Mr. Lionel. Lily picked up a small box of assorted chocolates, already imagining them as the perfect treat for later that evening by the fire. Their next stop was the Vermont Ski and Snowboard Museum, just a short walk away. Mrs. Beatrice led them through the doors, her voice full of enthusiasm. "This museum is a treasure trove for anyone curious about Vermont's skiing history," she said. Clara and Lily explored the exhibits, marveling at vintage ski equipment, old photographs, and stories of early winter adventurers. Lily was particularly captivated by a display about the evolution of ski fashion. "Can you imagine skiing in those wool outfits?" she said, laughing as she pointed to a mannequin dressed in an old-fashioned ski suit. Mrs. Beatrice chuckled. "The sport has come a long way, hasn't it? But it's always been a central part of life here in Stowe." Back on Main Street, they stopped at a small holiday market in the town square. Wooden stalls decorated with string lights and evergreen boughs displayed an array of handcrafted goods. Artisans sold everything from woolen scarves to intricate wooden ornaments. Lily picked up a delicate ornament shaped like a snowflake, its edges carved with the precision of an artist's hand. "It's so beautiful," she said, holding it up to Clara. "Let's get it," Clara replied. "It will be the perfect reminder of this trip." The sound of soft music drifted through the market as carolers in Victorian-style attire began to sing. Their voices were gentle yet strong, harmonizing in a way that made the moment feel timeless. Mrs. Beatrice paused, closing her eyes for a moment as the music enveloped them. "That's what I love about this town," she said softly. "It knows how to celebrate the season." As the afternoon turned to early evening, the trio visited a small cafe called the Stowe Sweets Parlor. They ordered steaming mugs of cider and a slice of warm apple pie to share. "This town feels like it's out of a storybook," Lily said, stirring her cider with a cinnamon stick. "It truly is," Clara agreed. "There's so much care and tradition in everything here." Mrs. Beatrice nodded. "That's Stowe for you. It's not just a place, it's a feeling. People come here to find a little magic." When the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden glow over the snow, they returned to their car with bags of keepsakes and memories. "Thank you, Mrs. Beatrice," Clara said as they dropped her off near the church. "This has been such a special day." "My pleasure," she replied, her cheeks rosy from the cold. "Enjoy the rest of your time here. And don't miss the lantern walk tomorrow evening, it's a Stowe tradition." As Clara and Lily made their way back to the lodge, the quiet hum of the car and the glow of the village lights behind them felt like the perfect ending to a day filled with discovery and connection. Back in their room, they unpacked their treasures, placing the snowflake ornament on a small evergreen tree provided in their suite. As Clara tucked a blanket around her legs and Lily settled into the armchair by the window, they both felt the contentment of having stepped into a world where time seemed to slow, allowing them to savor every moment together. Chapter 4. The next morning, the snow was falling in soft, lazy flakes, coating the world in a pristine blanket of white. Clara and Lily were bundled warmly as they made their way to the stables on the Trapp family lodge grounds. A sleigh awaited them, its runners glinting faintly in the soft light, and a pair of chestnut horses stood patiently, their breath misting in the cold air. "This is straight out of a fairy tale," Lily whispered as they approached, her boots crunching in the snow. Their guide for the ride, Mr. Peter, tipped his woolen cap in greeting. "Morning, ladies," he said, his voice rich and warm. "Are you ready for a peaceful ride through the woods?" "We're ready," Clara replied, helping Lily climb into the sleigh before settling herself under the thick wool blanket provided. As the sleigh began to glide along the snow-packed trail, the only sounds were the jingling of the horses' harness bells and the faint whisper of the runners against the snow. The forest seemed magical, each tree limb adorned with a fresh layer of snow, and the air carried a sense of stillness that felt sacred. Mr. Peter pointed out features of the landscape as they went: a small frozen creek, a cluster of birch trees standing like sentinels, and a distant peak that seemed to touch the sky. "This land has been part of the lodge for generations," he explained. The Von Trapps loved exploring it in every season, but winter always held a special place in their hearts. As they rode deeper into the forest, Lily leaned against Clara, her voice soft. "It's like we're the only ones in the world out here." Clara smiled, squeezing her daughter's hand. "That's the beauty of this place. It feels untouched." After the sleigh ride, they returned to the lodge for a quick warm-up with mugs of spiced tea in the lounge. Mr. Hans greeted them on their way out, a pair of snowshoes in hand. "Ah, you're just in time," he said, smiling. "The trail to the overlook has been freshly groomed. Would you like to give snowshoeing a try?" Clara hesitated, glancing at Lily, who nodded enthusiastically. "We'd love to," Clara said. Mr. Hans helped them secure their snowshoes, demonstrating the proper way to step and balance. The trail began just beyond the lodge, winding through a stand of evergreens before opening onto a gentle slope. At first, Clara struggled to find her rhythm, laughing softly as her foot caught on a branch hidden beneath the snow. "I might be better suited to sitting by the fire," she joked. Lily, already ahead of her, turned back with a grin. "You're doing great, Mom. Just follow me." They walked in companionable silence, the snow absorbing most sounds except the crunch of their steps and the occasional chirp of a winter bird. Clara found herself relaxing into the steady rhythm, her breath forming soft clouds in the air. After a while, the trail led them to a clearing with a wooden bench overlooking a vast expanse of snowy hills and distant peaks. Clara and Lily sat side by side, gazing out at the serene landscape. "This is amazing," Lily said, her voice filled with awe. Clara nodded, her eyes scanning the horizon. "It's moments like these that make everything feel right in the world." They stayed there for a while, listening to the gentle wind and watching the snowflakes fall. Eventually, Mr. Hans joined them, carrying a thermos of hot chocolate he'd prepared. "I thought you might enjoy a little something to warm up," he said, pouring the steaming liquid into small cups. Lily accepted hers with a smile. "You're the best, Mr. Hans." He laughed softly. "I do my best. This trail has always been a favorite of mine. It's a place to think, to reflect, and to remember the beauty around us." Clara sipped her drink, the rich chocolate warming her from the inside out. "It's easy to see why the Von Trapps chose this land. It feels like it was meant to be preserved." Mr. Hans nodded. They saw it as a sanctuary, a place to share with others. "And now, you're part of that legacy, enjoying it just as they did." The walk back to the lodge felt even more peaceful, the path familiar now and their hearts full from the experience. By the time they returned their snowshoes and made their way to their room, the sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, casting a soft golden glow over the snow-covered grounds. That evening, they sat by the fire in the lodge's library, flipping through an old book about the Von Trapp family's history. Lily leaned against Clara's shoulder, her eyes heavy with contentment. "Today was perfect," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "It really was," Clara replied, kissing the top of her daughter's head. As the fire crackled softly and the world outside grew darker, Clara felt a deep sense of peace. This was the kind of day she had dreamed of, and she knew there were more magical moments still to come. Chapter 5. The savory aroma of roasting meat and spices filled the air as Clara and Lily stepped into the lodge's dining room that evening. The room was alive with soft laughter and the gentle hum of conversation, while a faint melody from a string quartet played in the background. A towering Christmas tree stood in one corner, its ornaments catching the warm light of the chandeliers. "Good evening, ladies," Mr. Franz, the head chef, greeted them warmly as he approached their table. His thick Austrian accent and jovial demeanor immediately made them feel welcome. "Tonight, we have prepared a very special dinner inspired by the Von Trapp family's favorite recipes." Clara and Lily exchanged a smile, their curiosity piqued. "What do you recommend?" Clara asked, unfolding her napkin. "Ah," Mr. Franz said with a theatrical flourish, "you must try the Wiener Schnitzel and the Kaiserschmarrn for dessert. But first, let us start with something warm for this cold evening." He clapped his hands, and moments later, a server brought steaming bowls of goulash soup to their table. The rich, paprika-spiced broth was hearty and comforting, the perfect start to their meal. "This is amazing," Lily said between bites, her cheeks rosy from the warmth of the room. "It's an old family recipe," Mr. Franz said with pride. "Cooking is a way to keep traditions alive, just as music was for the Von Trapps." The main course arrived next, a beautifully plated Wiener Schnitzel served with warm potato salad and a side of lingonberry sauce. Clara cut into her portion, savoring the crisp breading and tender meat. "This might be the best meal I've ever had," she said, glancing at Lily, who nodded enthusiastically in agreement. Throughout the dinner, Mr. Franz stopped by their table to share stories about the Von Trapps and their love for food. "Maria Von Trapp herself was quite the cook," he said. "She believed that meals should bring people together, and here at the lodge, we carry on that tradition." After dessert, a sweet and airy Kaiserschmarrn dusted with powdered sugar, they lingered at their table, sipping mulled wine and soaking in the festive atmosphere. The sound of soft chatter and clinking glasses mingled with the music, creating a cocoon of warmth and contentment. "Mom, this has been so much fun," Lily said, her voice soft. "I feel like we're part of something special here." Clara reached across the table, placing her hand over Lily's. "We are, sweetheart. This place has a way of making you feel that way." Later that evening, the two joined a small group in the lodge's baking room for a holiday cookie decorating workshop. Long tables were set up with trays of sugar cookies in festive shapes, stars, trees, snowflakes, along with bowls of colored icing, sprinkles, and edible glitter. "Welcome, everyone," said Mrs. Greta, a cheerful woman with flour-dusted hands. "Tonight, we're going to make cookies as beautiful as the memories you're creating." Lily immediately dove into the activity, selecting a snowflake-shaped cookie and carefully piping blue icing along its edges. Clara followed suit, her fingers steady as she decorated a star with gold sprinkles. "These look almost too pretty to eat," Lily said, holding up one of her finished cookies. Mrs. Greta laughed. "That's the trick, my dear. You make them beautiful, then eat them anyway." As they worked, the room filled with laughter and chatter. Guests shared stories of their own holiday traditions, and Mrs. Greta shared tales of past Christmases at the lodge. "Did you know," she said, leaning conspiratorially toward the group, "that the Von Trapps used to host holiday concerts right here in the lodge? They'd sing carols in both English and German, and guests would join in." "That sounds magical," Clara said, imagining the warmth and joy of those evenings. "It was," Mrs. Greta replied with a smile. "And in a way, we're continuing that spirit tonight. Sharing food, laughter, and creativity, these are the things that make the season special." By the end of the workshop, Clara and Lily had a box full of decorated cookies and cheeks sore from smiling. They returned to their room, placing the box on the small table by the window and sitting down to admire their handiwork. "I think yours are prettier than mine," Clara said, holding up one of Lily's snowflakes. "Nah," Lily replied, nudging her mom playfully. "Yours have personality." Clara laughed, wrapping an arm around her daughter. "I'll take that as a compliment." As the snow continued to fall outside, they snuggled under a blanket with cups of tea, sharing the cookies they had made and reliving the highlights of the evening. The glow of the lodge lights outside and the warmth of their shared laughter created a perfect harmony of comfort and joy. Before long, Lily's head began to nod, her eyelids growing heavy. Clara guided her to bed, tucking her in with care. As she stood by the window, watching the snow drift gently to the ground, she felt her heart swell with gratitude. This place, this trip, and these moments with Lily were more than she had hoped for. And there was still more magic to come. Chapter 6. The afternoon was crisp and clear, with the sun shining brightly over the snow-covered landscape. Clara and Lily decided to spend the day at the Trapp Family Lodge's Nordic Center, exploring the property's renowned cross-country skiing trails. "I've never tried cross-country skiing before," Lily said, adjusting the straps of her ski poles as they stepped onto the snow-covered trail. "It's a bit different from downhill skiing," Clara replied, balancing on her skis. "It's more about rhythm and enjoying the scenery than speed. Let's take it slow and enjoy the journey." A friendly instructor named Mr. Carl showed them the basics, demonstrating how to glide along the snow and use their poles for support. "Remember," he said, his breath visible in the cold air, "it's all about finding a steady pace. Relax and let the skis do the work." They started on a beginner's loop, surrounded by towering evergreens and the faint sound of a nearby brook. The trail wound gently through the forest, offering glimpses of the mountains in the distance. "This is peaceful," Lily said, her voice tinged with wonder as she found her rhythm. Clara nodded, her cheeks rosy from the exercise. "It's like walking through a snow globe." Halfway through the loop, they paused at a small wooden shelter with benches and thermoses of hot cider provided by the lodge. They sipped the warm, spiced drink as they took in the tranquil beauty of their surroundings. "Mom, I'm glad we're doing this," Lily said, leaning against the railing of the shelter. "It feels like we're part of something timeless." "It does," Clara agreed. "This kind of quiet is rare. I'm glad we're sharing it." After finishing the loop, they returned to the lodge, tired but exhilarated. They spent some time in the lounge, warming up by the fire and chatting with other guests about the trails they had explored. That evening, the lodge's festivities centered around a storytelling circle in the music room. Clara and Lily joined a small group of guests gathered around a roaring fire, where Mrs. Greta was waiting with a book of holiday tales. "Good evening, everyone," Mrs. Greta said with a welcoming smile. "Tonight, we'll be sharing stories of Christmas traditions from around the world. Some you may know, and some may be new to you." The room was cozy, filled with the soft crackle of the fire and the warm glow of candlelight. Mrs. Greta began with a story about Saint Nicholas, describing the origins of gift-giving and how different countries celebrated his feast day. "Did you know," she said, her voice animated, "that in Austria, the Von Trapp's homeland, children leave out their shoes on December 5th for Saint Nicholas to fill with treats?" Lily listened intently, her eyes wide. "That's such a sweet tradition," she whispered to Clara. Another guest shared a story from their childhood, recalling Christmases spent in a small village in Sweden, where they lit candles on St. Lucia's Day. The circle came alive with laughter and nostalgia as more guests contributed their own holiday memories. When it was Clara's turn, she shared a story about her own family's tradition of baking sugar cookies together every Christmas Eve. "It's simple," she said, smiling at Lily, "but it's always been about spending time together and making something special." Lily nodded. "We should bake cookies tomorrow, just like we always do." "We will," Clara promised. As the storytelling came to an end, Mrs. Greta handed out small, handmade ornaments to each guest. "A little gift to remember tonight," she said warmly. Clara and Lily returned to their room, the ornament, a tiny painted lantern, hanging from Lily's fingers. They placed it on the small evergreen tree in their suite before settling in by the window with cups of tea. "Today felt like it was filled with magic," Lily said, her voice soft as she gazed out at the snowy grounds. "It really was," Clara replied, her heart full. As the moon rose over the mountains and the world outside grew still, the quiet contentment of the day stayed with them. It had been a day of discovery, connection, and joy, exactly what they had hoped to find on this trip. Chapter 7. The morning light streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over the room as Clara stretched and listened to the soft hum of life stirring in the lodge. Their final day had arrived, and though the thought of leaving filled her with a twinge of sadness, she was determined to savor every remaining moment. "Morning, Mom," Lily said, her voice still groggy as she peeked out from beneath her blanket. "Good morning, sweetheart," Clara replied, smiling. "How about we start the day with breakfast by the fire?" The dining room was bustling with guests enjoying their morning meals, but the atmosphere remained serene and cheerful. Clara and Lily found a spot near the fireplace, where the flames crackled softly, providing a comforting warmth. "Can we get pancakes with maple syrup?" Lily asked as the server arrived. "Of course," Clara said. "When in Vermont, you have to have the maple syrup." The meal was simple but delicious, fluffy pancakes, rich syrup, and fresh fruit. As they ate, they talked about their favorite moments from the trip, from the snowy sleigh ride to the peaceful lantern walk. After breakfast, they decided to spend their final hours exploring one last trail on the lodge grounds. The snow had settled into a sparkling blanket overnight, and the air was crisp but not too cold. They opted for a short, easy trail that looped around the property, offering stunning views of the mountains and a peaceful sense of closure. "This feels like the perfect way to say goodbye," Clara said as they paused at a small overlook. Lily nodded, her cheeks rosy from the walk. "I don't want to leave, but I'll always remember this trip." As they made their way back to the lodge, they stopped briefly at the music room, where a small group of guests was singing carols. The familiar melody of Edelweiss drifted through the air, a gentle nod to the Von Trapp family's legacy. Clara and Lily joined in, their voices blending softly with the others. It was a moment of connection, not just with each other, but with the spirit of the lodge and everyone who had come before them. Back in their room, they packed their belongings, taking care to wrap the small treasures they had gathered during their stay. The snowflake ornament, the handmade lantern, and the chocolates from the village were tucked carefully into their bags. Before they left, they stopped by the lobby to thank Mr. Hans, who was busy helping other guests but paused to say goodbye. "It was a pleasure having you here," he said warmly. "I hope you'll come back and visit us again." "We definitely will," Clara replied, shaking his hand. As they drove away from the lodge, the snow-covered mountains gradually receding in the distance, Clara felt a deep sense of peace. The trip had been everything she'd hoped for, a chance to connect with Lily, to embrace the quiet beauty of the season, and to create memories that would stay with them forever. "Mom," Lily said after a while, breaking the comfortable silence, "I think this was the best trip we've ever taken." Clara smiled, her heart full. "I think so too, sweetheart." As the car continued down the winding road, the lodge disappeared from view, but the warmth and magic of their time there lingered, a glowing ember in their hearts. It was a journey they would never forget, and Clara knew they'd carry the spirit of the Trapp family lodge with them, wherever they went.